Monday, July 25th, Wikispeed, Linwood, Washington. I'm here with Joe Justice, Max Canella, and Jackson Rudd. William Newing, Scrum Master recording. Max, take it away.
So essentially what we did today is I performed a tone adjustment, straightened the alignment of these wheels so that they're parallel to the chassis. So that took a while.
Thank you very much.
Sure, there's no trouble. That's a lie, but,
Yeah,
you know. So, and then what we did after that is we tried to measure the turning angles of the wheels. Thank you for the example, appreciate it. Relative to the chassis being the sort of 90-degree sort of base to work off of. But we found that we were getting that when we were turning, I believe it was right, the inner wheel was turned more than the outer wheel, so you've got reverse Ackerman, whereas when we turn them to the left, we actually get an Ackerman turn, so not a reverse Ackerman, and the same wheel, the outer wheel this time is turned inside more, and the inner wheel is turned less. Does that make sense? So
I think
yes.
so. Yeah. So it looks
that's
like
what the data.
car,
That's
yeah.
what the data is telling us, and we're gonna go over the data some more. But that is really weird if that's the case, from what I've gathered. So, getting one type of Ackerman one way and then another type the other way.
This car is destined for autocross. That's its next step, to validate its suspension. And I thought the car was set up with reverse Ackerman, which is only effective at over 100 miles per hour and is a net drag below 100 miles per hour. So I wanted to baseline the reverse Ackerman in degrees now, how many degrees of toe in versus toe out it has on each wheel as it turns, which is part of Max's internship. Then it was to convert it to standard Ackerman. That's going to work better for autocross tracks and for driving around town. However, we have an even weirder scenario where it looks like one is reverse Ackerman and one is Ackerman. When we're turning left, it's one, right the other, which isn't going to help anybody. So we need to figure out why this car wants to behave that way, looking at the geometry of the suspension setup on both sides and the way we have our steering rack configured, and figure it out. And we'll all pair, but I'm going to shoulder all of this onto Max, because yes, that's going to happen.
That's gonna happen.
Meanwhile, Jackson, in a separate demo video, he rocked it, although you can do it again if you want. He's programmatically controlling the throttle from Arduino Mega. And so directly to the throttle body, not from a pedal, not actuating the pedal, but he's talking directly to the drive-by-wire throttle on the R18, and it's two potentiometers, and he's spoofing both of them. Are you using the analog out pins on the Arduino or the PWM?
I'm using the digital right because it can do PWM.
Okay, so you're doing PWM with digital right on digital
Yes.
pins, and it's working.
Yeah, it's totally working. And then also, I'd like to also demo this little dinky little program I'm working on. So what I'm trying to make is what do you call it? Something that detects if you're in a lane. So this is like a picture of the road I just fed my program. So as you can see, it's just a road. And then when I run it through this program that I have so far, what I get is imshow I can get the edges and I can cut off the part that's not important. And now what I'm doing is I'm doing what I think is pronounced a hue transform. So what that does is it tries a bunch of let me see if I can get to that. A bunch of candidate lines, and it plots a point for how many, and for every position, for every line, and every single line in the picture is drawn on this thing. It shows how many lines in the picture, which is the one I just showed you, are explained by that. So the parts where it's really, really dense are the actual lines we're going to put into it, and when I run the program, what it does, though it's glitching right now, is it's trying to draw a line where that explains most of the dots, which will hopefully be on the lanes. And I can put this on GitHub as well.
Excellent. So that basically shows that it's a way to map your path and roadway, so that it's almost mimicking and making a better version of the navigational or sensory system where it's driving, and if you're like lane changing, shifting not correctly, it's like gonna flash at you. It's like, hey, wake up, you're not doing it correctly.
Oh,
Right,
the idea
and-
is to get towards full autonomy. So
Right.
Yeah.
stepwise aiming that way.
And by making it so that we take a image, which is a bunch of pixels, and turning it into just a couple of lanes, the problem reduces in dimensions of thousands of pixels to only 2 or 3, maybe 4 different dimensions by the 2 different lines, and it's much quicker to learn for a neural net or something. So that's kind of the purpose.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Then William and Jackson, that's completely rad. And Max, also thank you so much for slaving over the steering angles. If this were the front of a 2006 Honda Civic, but with a gas tank mounted on top like a motorcycle, the ignition and the gauge cluster would be right here to tell you the engine temperature, for example. And that's what this is from, a 2006 Honda Civic. Well, we have it in the rear of the car for mid-engine, because the engine is actually just in front of the rear axle, so it's mid-engine. That means we need extension wires to bring our gauges up to where our driver is and the ignition. Now, William and I already wired up the ignition previously. We did that by using weather pack connections, splicing them on, testing them, and having an extension cable for our ignition. Well, this is an extension cable for the gauge cluster, which has more pins. The challenge is Honda has duplicate colors. So there's only one pink wire, but there's 2 browns, and I think it's 3 greens. There might even be 4. I don't have the counter in front of me, but looking at them. There's repeat colors. So when these have been cut to make the extension, knowing which green goes to which green is our current challenge. So William and I created a table today of which colors are unique, which ones we know how to connect to them, and there's 4. There's 4 unique wires out of the whole cluster. All the rest have at least one more duplicate of the same wire color. So our next step is to get more weather pack connectors, and we broke our weather pack quick disconnect pin tool, which lets us pull these pins out and set them in a different connector, which is what we're going to need to do to test different combinations. And we'll start testing each of the different combinations, which is what we did today. So my tip for someone else somewhere in the world doing this, every time before you cut, flag the wire on both sides where you're going to cut, label it uniquely, then cut. Every time. Even if you think, oh, I'm only doing 2 wires, then when you cut 2 more somewhere else and realize that 2 are the same color, absolutely a challenge. So never ever cut a wire is my tip to the world without flagging both sides. And by flag, here's what I mean. You can either print a label and stick it around, or you can take tape. This is 3M Blue Painter's tape, which is surprisingly durable, and use a Sharpie marker to label exactly its purpose. So that's what I mean by a flag. A label printer, like we have a handheld Brady label printer, that also works great, is what I've got for that. And then we started drawing a shop shelf plan to create an internal warehouse. Meanwhile, Bella, and I forgot Bella's last name.
Brown.
Brown?
Yeah.
Bella Brown is crunching Wikispeed financials to make recommendations on models of how we should change the financials of how the company runs, which is part of her expertise and part of her internship. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she's going to recommend. And that's what we've gotten done on July 25th, 2016, Linwood, Washington, United States shop. Thank you, guys.